Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include Lost Ark's devs addressing honing complaints, Elden Ring's new patch, the overhaul to Diablo 3's Season 26 theme, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now, before we move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Dark Nemesis, a hack-and-slash MMORPG with PvE and PvP available on Google Play and the App Store. Dark Nemesis Infinite Quest takes place in a multiverse connected by Mirror City, a town hub with portals leading to other worlds and civilizations throughout the universe. So we see a mixture of ancient magic and sci-fi tech coming together to fight demon aliens. The CGI and graphics are crazy good. You have to protect the Crystal of Light from the Raven cult, and you'll get to explore this vast variety of different planets. An underwater world, an AI-ruled planet made entirely of tech, a dark magic world ruled by an evil church, and more. You have 4 classes to choose from: mage, assassin, warrior, or gunslinger, and you can choose on level 3 different item categories: wings, companions, and spirit. Spirit being something that serves as a mount and a weapon. Wings are more than just cosmetic, they have actual stats to choose from, and companions will accompany you on your journey. Gameplay has quick battles, allowing you to pop out your phone anytime and play for a few minutes, or you can settle in for a longer play session. And you can play with friends or other random players with huge scaled battle royale, in which hundreds of players fight in real time, or PvP team battle modes like 5v5 or 10v10. Use my link and gift code to download and start your journey in Dark Nemesis. And don't forget to check out their event in which you create and share your own video with hashtag Dark Nemesis to have a chance to win gift cards and in-game rewards. In our first story, we got this week a gameplay reveal for upcoming Harry Potter game, Hogwarts Legacy. And as someone who's not even a Harry Potter fan, I have to say it looks fantastic. In Hogwarts Legacy, you take on the role of a new student at Hogwarts in the 1800s. You get to customize your character, you'll get sorted into one of the 4 houses, you'll attend classes, explore the school and surrounding settlements, fight enemies, level up, upgrade skills, loot, buy, or craft your own gear. It's basically Skyrim, but in the Harry Potter universe. There will be puzzles to solve, you can adopt different playstyles, you can fly on broomsticks. There are companions, dynamic seasons and climates, and just looking at the footage, all the environments are just so rich, so exquisitely detailed. And when you hear the devs talk, you can tell that this is made with love for the source material, and they're drawing upon the books and the movies, respecting both, which I think is the best way to make all fans happy. Hogwarts Legacy releases in the 2022 holiday season. If you want to check out the footage for yourself, the link is in the description. In super quick Path of Exile news, the devs are planning to start a beta test for PC controller support. The plan is to release controller support alongside the 3.18 expansion, but they want to get some public beta testing in first. In Lost Ark news, the big story of the week has been the building story of the past month, which came to a head alongside the release of the game's latest content. We're talking here about the honing system. To quickly catch up, those of you who don't know the details here, Lost Ark's gearing system is based on upgrading your gear's item level through what is called gear honing. To put things simply, the higher gear level you go, the more difficult it is to upgrade, because every time you try to hone your gear, there's a chance that it fails, but the resources are consumed nonetheless. And while some players have been complaining about the system as a whole, the situation becomes particularly bad around gear level 1340 and until 1370. This is a very high level range that only a small fraction of the player base has achieved, and an even smaller number have managed to push through it. You see, what happens at this level is that your odds of success on honing are very low and the resource cost is very high. Those who push through, they're investing several hours a day playing the game, farming up the materials, and they also have an intimate enough knowledge of the game to understand the most efficient way to farm those resources. Or, and herein lies the problem, some players spend money to acquire those resources. Real money. And they basically brute force their way through with their credit card. Now, there have always been arguments over whether Lost Ark is pay to win or not, and I think this argument is largely semantic. I don't care what label we use. The fact is, you can spend real money to acquire materials that you can use to upgrade your gear, thus becoming more powerful. And not only that, the game gates content behind gear levels, so you cannot progress to further content until you've achieved a certain gear level. So some players feel as though the very high costs and the very low success rates are coercing them to spend money to proceed. Then this issue was compounded when new content recently released, Argos, which requires you to be item level 1370 to access. So now the devs are dangling this shiny new content in front of players who are struggling through the honing process, and it just feels like a slap in the face. Then the weird thing is that once you reach item level 1370, it actually becomes easier to upgrade your gear for a while. So the people that make it through the hump then begin to sprint ahead of everyone else. Now, the Russian and Korean versions of the game give players far more catch-up mechanics to get more resources to plow through this gear gulf, and their gear honing rates are just better. In fact, the Korean players went through this same issue back when it released originally in Korea years ago. They call the 1340 to the 1370 range the dead zone. They were the guinea pigs that went through the game's growing pains years ago. And a lot of Korean players are now wondering why Western players are having to suffer through the same issue that the devs solved for them. Now, I know some people reply to complaints about all this by saying, "What's the rush? Why do you need to beat the whole game in a month? Go at your own pace." And that's all well and good for some people, but not everyone is the same. Some people don't feel the same, and you can't get them to feel that way about the game. Some people play games because they want to play with their friends, and if their friends are ahead of them, well, they need to catch up. Some people play in guilds, and they need to keep up with their guildmates. Even outside of all that, for a lot of people, a multiplayer game is about the communal experience. It's about all of us experiencing the same thing at the same time. Remember when Game of Thrones was popular? When everyone was watching the latest episodes as soon as they came out? Remember when the Red Wedding happened? I remember. I remember being a season behind everyone and feeling out of the loop as everyone on the internet was going crazy talking about this, sharing communal experiences that you just cannot relate to if you're not keeping up with the community. You feel you're missing out. And on top of that, when new content is added to the game, the hype for that content is when it is added. When devs add new content, it's only natural for players to feel like they want to experience that content as soon as possible. It's different if the game releases with that content. It's already in the game with the understanding that we'll get to it later. But when there is a content update, a new shiny thing, very few people will feel like, awesome, I can't wait to enjoy that in 4 months. Now, this whole situation was reaching a breaking point in the player base when the devs responded. In a lengthy blog post, they addressed players' concerns and stated a plan to begin working on a solution. First off, very noteworthy, Amazon Games, which is Lost Ark's Western publisher, and Smilegate RPG, the developer, actually met up in person to discuss how to proceed with this. In their message to players, they stated that data they analyzed from the Russian and Korean launches projected that a larger portion of players would have reached the level needed for Argos by now. They didn't realize that Western players would spend more time on horizontal content. Basically, the game has a huge wealth of content, and you can either choose to be as efficient as you can possibly be, to become more powerful, and progress as quickly as possible, or you can explore more of the other content the game has to offer. They also stated that they did not expect the effect that bots would have on the game's economy, which resulted in greater scarcity of resources for players. And it sounds like now, after listening to player feedback and looking at data, they have decided to slow down on releasing new endgame content and instead work on updates that help players reach the content currently in the game. They'll still add content, but they're planning to add more horizontal content, like new classes, things that everyone can access, not just the endgame elite. Oh, and they're also planning to release skins at a faster rate than they were originally released in Korea, as well as classes so that they could catch up to the Korean version. Now, some concrete steps that the devs said they'll be taking is to supply more progression materials to players to earn through fun in-game events, injecting more gold into the mid to end game, and continuing to ban bots. In next week's update, they'll add extra honing rewards to the new Grand Prix event. They'll introduce a new casual event Guardian raid that rewards honing materials, and they'll start the first season of competitive PvP. The new Guardian event can be entered once per day per roster, and it'll let you earn coins to spend on rewards at a new vendor. And you'll basically be gear equalized in these, so your gear score won't matter. They're also modifying the Grand Prix to add tailoring and metallurgy books to the reward table to help with honing rates, and they'll be increasing the number of event coins you get. Competitive PvP will also reward honing materials, among other things. On top of all that, on March 21st, after the weekly update and maintenance, all players will receive a gift of free skins and honing materials. So, does this fix everything? I don't know, but it'll at least help. And it shows a good faith effort to work on the problem, to listen to player feedback, and to take the players' concerns seriously. And excellent communication from the devs on this. But I turn the question to you folks, our Raiders of the Lost Ark. What are your thoughts on all this? Sound off in the comments. In last Epoch news, the dev team announced a new partnership with Tencent this week. After spending 18 months trying to find the right investment partners in order to access more funds to continue to expand the team and its ambitions, developer 11th Hour Games partnered with Tencent, who acquired a minority stake in the company and are basically gonna let the devs keep on doing what they've been doing, as they themselves are fans of the game and have played it thoroughly. Now, when I first read this headline, I thought Tencent bought 11th Hour, but they just made a low equity investment. So for the cynics, and I know you're out there that don't believe that they'd let the devs keep doing what they want to do, well, they don't have the equity to boss them around anyway. And for the devs, I mean, this is a dream. They started off as just a tiny team working on a passion project. They held a Kickstarter and raised $250,000 in funding. Then they have a solid product in early access for some time now, and before even completely releasing their first game, a giant company like Tencent is already willing to invest in them. Their success is definitely well-deserved. They also released this week their Depths of Eterra update, which adds 2 new dungeons, the Arena Champion system, new uniques, a rework of catalysts, and more. We spoke about one of the dungeons, Soulfire Bastion, in last week's video, but we got more details this week on the second new dungeon, the Lightless Arbor. While in this dungeon, a magical source of light known as the Pyre Amber will travel with you through the dungeon, and you can command it to go light up a specific area, then return to you. Enemies are buffed when in darkness, so controlling this light source will be crucial to your success in the dungeon. But if you take too much damage, the light radius starts to shrink, and you need to find a way to replenish its light. Then the Arena of Champions is a new alternative endless arena. It doesn't replace it, you'll have the choice to run one or the other. With the Arena of Champions, you pick between 4 tiers of difficulty and then face off against waves of enemies. While progressing through the waves, you'll have the option to add more modifiers to the waves to increase the challenge and the reward. Then the final wave will pit you against one of 3 arena champions in their dedicated arenas. This update is out now if you want to try it out. In Elden Ring news, the devs announced that the game has sold 1 million units in Japan and 12 million worldwide. Interestingly, they also stated, quote, "Please look forward to more of Elden Ring as an IP, characters, and other intellectual property, in hopes of expanding beyond the realm of games." Clearly, George R.R. Martin is looking to start a new novel series to distract himself even more from the winds of winter. With these sales figures, Elden Ring is the biggest new IP in Europe since The Division in 2016, and it's interesting to note that its European sales went mostly to PC. 44% of sales were on PC, 27% on PS5, 16% on Xbox, and 13% on PS4. Kinda makes you wonder why more care wasn't spent on the PC version and ensuring it doesn't feel like a console port. Hopefully for their next game. Elden Ring is currently the best-selling game of 2022 in the US, and though the year is still young, if we look over the past 12-month period, it is the 5th best-selling game. For some context here, the publisher had estimated 4 million sales, so tripling that? Yeah, that's huge. Dark Souls 3 was their previous record seller, and it reached 10 million sales after 4 years. It took them months just to reach 3 million sales. And now, 3 weeks after its launch, Elden Ring remains one of the most played games on Steam, and I don't get why. I mean, the world record speedrun for the game is under 30 minutes, so what's taking everyone so long? A significant patch also released this week for the game that included balance changes and a massive quality of life update in the form of NPCs now being marked on the map. Players, unfortunately, are still reporting stuttering issues, so seems performance has not been fixed yet. For the balance changes, in short, it's mostly what's expected. Those stronger caster spells are being nerfed, and this should shake up the meta. Shields have been made more effective, and the prices of smithing stones have been drastically reduced, so upgrading weapons will be much easier. This update also brings a new NPC to the game, and finished quest lines for NPC plotlines. In some quick aRPG news, former Dragon Age boss Mike Laidlaw is working on a, quote, ambitious new action RPG. It's not clear whether he means a Diablo-like RPG or the more nebulous action RPG term, but it is projected to release no sooner than the end of the 2024 fiscal year. And lastly, in Diablo news, starting with Diablo 3, the PTR updated late this week, delivering some new buffs to the Raykor Barbarian, and massively updating the new endgame mode, Echoing Nightmares. So first off, the Raykor changes now add weapon throw to the 6-piece. Previously, you would have to charge into enemies in order to then toss your spear, which was a little bit odd because you're either throwing right into melee or you have to then charge away from enemies. So now working weapon throw into this 6-piece allows you to keep at a distance. They also modified Ariat's Law to make you be able to go above max fury, thus resulting in more damage, and the 300th spear increases the attack speed of weapon throw. This altogether helps with the Rift Guardian fights, but the build is still lacking for survivability. Again, some toughness bonus added somewhere in the 4-piece would be nice. And preliminary results again are, while this is an improvement, Raykor still isn't in a stellar place. Then the Echoing Nightmare updates. The main criticism for Echoing Nightmares was that the playstyle was pretty stationary, you would just sort of sit in the middle and let monsters come at you, and that the waves of monsters were just kind of always the same. Things could become pretty repetitive. Well, they took that feedback and now everything crazy happens in an Echoing Nightmare. Rare monsters spawn, meteors shoot down from the sky to get you to move your butt, hellish machinations will now randomly appear and spawn endless streams of exploding lunatics, forcing you to go find these hiding in the corners of the maps and destroy them, otherwise you're just gonna have an endless stream of lunatics exploding everywhere. Which also solves the issue of just trying to build up a density of monsters, which you ideally want to do in a greater rift. These lunatics explode, so here's a bunch of monsters that are gonna disappear, so you can't even start building up area damage with them. So I do quite like that it forces you to go out and look for those spawners. We also get Rift Guardian spawning. Monsters spawn faster, meaning you're actually going to get overwhelmed faster. Then some quality of life stuff, Shadow Clone Explosion now shows on the floor. Exit timer increased to 60 seconds from 20. Increase the reward here, the Whisper of Atonement can now drop up to rank 125 instead of just rank 100. And monsters in Echoing Nightmares can no longer be frozen, stunned, rooted, or knocked back, so you cannot apply those same hard CC tactics that you would use in a Greater Rift. And they also fixed the conduit trying to actually deal damage. So overall, these changes make these far more exciting to play. You're forced to react to the mechanics. You cannot just sit in place. You have to go hunt down the hellish machinations. You have to avoid getting struck by the meteors. There are now elite affixes to fight. There are Rift Guardians that spawn, so some things are far more difficult to fight than others. I believe this is a significant improvement on the Echoing Nightmare. There still seems to be no real reason to go above tier 150, however, and tier 150 is relatively easy to achieve. So it feels like more rewards need to be added at higher tiers to incentivize players to challenge themselves and go beyond what is relatively easy to achieve. But we've certainly moved in a positive direction. Then in Diablo 2 news, PES Radar confirmed that patch 2.4 and the ladder will begin soon. In a reply to a comment on Reddit that joked that the ladder would be delayed another 4 months, PES Radar stated, quote, "Fat chance, ETA end of the month. We'll have a specific date soonish." This week also saw an update to popular Diablo 2 mod meeting Exile Sigma, for those who want to check out what Diablo 2 is like on steroids. In quick Diablo 4 news, PezRadar confirmed that the quarterly update is coming later this month, with a focus on exterior and environmental art. And lastly, in Diablo-related news, Diablo 2 veterans Phil Shank and Peter Hu have come together to form Moon Beast Productions, and are working on a new aRPG in an original IP. Shank, aka Shank the Overseer, was lead artist and lore writer for Diablo 2 before leading design on Lord of Destruction. Peter Hu was a programmer and lead designer on Diablo 2, and who has also worked on Torchlight and Torchlight 2. He was the creative director of Marvel Heroes, and both Hu and Shank worked on Hellgate London. Hu stated, quote, "Fans of our previous work will be hoping we stay true to our aRPG roots, and I don't think they'll be disappointed. But we are also working on a few big innovations with incredible potential." I look forward to seeing what these guys produce. And that is going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discussed Lost Ark's leaked roadmap. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you saw on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more gaming content.